The Fifth Avenue showroom glittered like a palace of light. But Selena Morgan stepped through its doors, dressed like she didn't belong. Outside, Manhattan pulsed with its usual rhythm, yellow taxis weaving through traffic, tourists snapping photos in front of storefronts, crisp autumn air filled with the scent of roasted chestnuts, and distant coffee shops offering pumpkin spice lattes. But inside Brilliance Gems, the world grew still and gleamed. Selena paused at the threshold, her dark eyes sweeping across the polished marble floor that reflected the glow of recessed lighting and diamond showcases. She was a black woman in her late 30s, her smooth brown skin framed by loose curls pulled back neatly. The navy blouse she wore clung gently to her frame, slightly faded at the seams. Worn jeans and scuffed white sneakers whispered of practicality, not privilege. A leather satchel hung from her shoulder edges, frayed from years of loyal use. Amber Collins, standing behind the counter, glanced up as the door whispered shut. For a split second, her carefully rehearsed smile stiffened. Amber, a young white woman in her mid-20s, quickly assessed Selena with a glance that traveled from her sneakers to her satchel, then to her face. She summoned a polite smile, thin but serviceable. "Good afternoon. Welcome to Brilliance Gems. May I help you with something?" Amber's voice carried the professional warmth expected of high-end customer service, but beneath it hummed a quiet dismissal. Selena returned the smile, calm and steady. "Yes, thank you. I'd like to view some of your diamond collections, particularly the pieces featured at last month's gala." Amber's fingers paused momentarily over a velvet tray of ruby rings. "Those are part of our exclusive line," she said, her tone dipping into carefully managed distance. "Viewings for those pieces typically require an appointment and are reserved for established clients." The deliberate emphasis on established was clear. At a nearby display, Trevor Daniels, a young white man adjusting sapphire earrings, glanced over. A faint smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth before he whispered something under his breath to Amber. She didn't respond, but allowed her lips to tighten briefly. Selena caught it, all the micro-expressions, the quick glances, the silent assessments. She was no stranger to this choreography of judgment. It wasn't new to her that a black woman dressed simply would trigger assumptions in spaces like these. The air inside the showroom, cool and perfumed with jasmine, carried an undercurrent more suffocating than its luxury suggested. Across the showroom floor stood Cynthia Blake, the store manager. Tall, poised, her blonde hair pinned into a perfect chignon, Cynthia wore a slate-gray suit that spoke of unyielding control. The moment Selena had entered, Cynthia's eyes had locked on her, noting every detail with the precision of a jeweler's loupe. To her, Selena was already categorized a visitor who didn't belong. Selena maintained her composure. Years of navigating rooms like this had honed her ability to endure these silent verdicts. She folded her hands calmly. "I understand," she said softly. "Could I take a look at your catalog instead? I'd like to learn more about your offerings." Amber blinked, surprised by the persistence wrapped in such politeness. She reached beneath the counter and produced a glossy booklet featuring mid-range collections, respectable pieces, but far from the gala's exclusives. "Of course. Feel free to browse these options." Amber motioned toward a quiet corner away from the main displays. Selena accepted the catalog and moved deliberately toward the suggested space, her sneakers nearly silent on the marble floor. She sat down, her posture upright, flipping through the catalog without hurry. From across the room, Trevor and Amber continued their muted conversation, occasionally stealing glances. Cynthia's gaze swept over everything like a watchful sentinel, ensuring that the showroom's image remained pristine. Selena noted every detail, the wealthy couple being ushered into a private viewing room offered champagne without request. The young man in a hoodie standing awkwardly by a display invisible to the staff. She absorbed the entire performance. After several moments, Cynthia approached her heels, tapping a measured cadence. She stopped beside Selena, offering a professional but clipped smile. "Are you browsing today?" Ma'am. Cynthia's tone was smooth, but edged her posture, betraying the calculation behind her words. Selena looked up, her dark eyes warm but steady. "Oh, I'm exactly where I need to be." The simple sentence hung in the air, a quiet defiance against the unspoken rules circling around her. The soft chime of the glass doors snapped the room's attention. It was Madison LeClaire. The showroom seemed to inhale collectively as the tall, elegant woman stepped inside, radiating confidence. Her long blonde hair shimmered under the showroom's crystal lights, cascading perfectly over the shoulders of her emerald silk dress. Diamond studs sparkled in her ears, and a glittering tennis bracelet winked with every subtle movement of her slender wrist. Selena Morgan glanced up briefly from her catalog as Madison entered. She recognized the socialite immediately, her face regularly graced New York's fashion pages. Her name whispered at charity galas and high society functions. Even Selena, who moved in far different circles, was familiar with Madison's aura of privilege. The contrast between them couldn't have been more deliberate. Cynthia Blake's transformation was instant. She glided across the showroom with the grace of someone greeting royalty. "Miss LeClaire, welcome back." Cynthia purred, her voice warmer and more genuine than it had been all day. "We have the gala collection ready for your private viewing. Right this way." Amber Collins straightened her blouse and abandoned the modest display she'd been tending, hurrying to assist. Trevor Daniels subtly adjusted his tie, positioning himself within Madison's orbit. Every employee's attention seemed magnetized toward her, as though her mere presence elevated the air itself. A junior staff member appeared from the back, with a chilled flute of champagne, which he offered with a small, respectful bow. Selena observed it all in silence. The room, which had barely tolerated her presence, now hummed with energy and enthusiasm. Madison hadn't even needed to ask. The doors to the exclusive collection opened for her effortlessly, as if preordained. It was a choreography Selena had seen many times, one that rarely included women who looked like her. Madison cast a quick glance around the showroom, her sharp blue eyes briefly meeting Selena's. A subtle, almost imperceptible smirk tugged at her lips before she turned her attention back to Cynthia and the awaiting champagne. The message was clear: some people belonged here more than others. Selena's grip on the catalog remained steady. She inhaled quietly, letting the slight sting of the moment pass through her without leaving a mark. There was no surprise here, only confirmation. She rose from her seat and approached one of the nearby displays, showcasing the pink diamonds, rare blushing gems that had been the centerpiece of the previous month's gala. The display glowed softly under perfectly positioned spotlights, each stone seemingly floating inside its case. "Could you please tell me about the sourcing of these diamonds?" Selena asked softly, directing the question toward Amber, who had hovered nearby while watching Madison. Amber's practiced smile flickered her eyes, darting momentarily toward Cynthia before answering. "They're ethically sourced, of course," she said quickly, the rehearsed response rolling off her tongue. "But for more details, I'd have to check with my manager." She made no move to actually summon Cynthia. Instead, Amber pivoted smoothly, gliding back toward Madison, who was now sipping champagne and admiring a velvet tray of diamond rings presented to her with theatrical reverence. Selena noted every small movement, every shift in posture and eye contact. The favoritism wasn't subtle. Cynthia stood attentively beside Madison, offering personal explanations of the gala pieces, while the rest of the showroom seemed to orbit around the socialite like minor planets circling a star. The wealthy couple from earlier, still in consultation, even paused to glance enviously at the spectacle unfolding. Trevor Daniels, who had been standing near another display, leaned slightly toward Amber as she returned. His voice dropped to a whisper, but Selina, attuned by years of experience, caught the murmured words. "She's still here. Honestly." Amber stifled a small laugh, but quickly masked it with a practiced smile as Cynthia glanced in their direction. Selina's expression didn't change, though her mind registered each exchange, each judgment silently accumulating. The young man in the hoodie still lingered unnoticed, near a modest ring display, his body language growing more awkward by the minute. No one offered him assistance. He might as well have been invisible. Selina's eyes moved back to the vibrant display of pink diamonds, their brilliance reflected in the glass, as if mocking the hierarchy unfolding behind her. The unspoken rules of the showroom were clear: wealth, fame, and appearance determined value here, not character. The tension in the air thickened, subtle but tangible like humidity before a storm. The staff's unspoken message was consistent. Her continued presence was tolerated but unwelcome. Madison's laughter rang softly through the showroom as she tried on a dazzling ring, the staff praising her exquisite taste. Cynthia's voice carried gentle admiration, praising the craftsmanship and rarity of the stones. Selina's catalog now felt heavier in her hands, a symbol of the boundaries being quietly enforced. She watched as Amber leaned in again to present Madison with another velvet tray, while Trevor positioned himself strategically for Madison's attention. Still, Selina remained unmoved. Her heartbeat steady, her face composed, her eyes keenly cataloging every interaction. The facade of politeness couldn't disguise the underlying truth any longer. They had shown her who they really were. Madison's head tilted ever so slightly as she caught Selina watching. The faintest trace of amusement sparkled in her eyes, like someone observing an amusing but harmless disruption. Selina's eyes narrowed slightly. She quietly reached into her satchel, her fingers brushing past a folded contract inside, resting briefly upon it, grounding herself. Her time was coming. The moment Selina's fingers touched the phone, the entire showroom shifted. The hush that fell was not immediate, but rather a slow, collective breath that seemed to draw everyone's attention toward her corner. Her movements were calm, deliberate. She pulled the small, worn flip phone from her satchel, a striking contrast to the sleek smartphones that staff and customers carried. Its presence alone was almost jarring amidst the gleam of diamonds and polished marble. Amber, now standing near Madison, stiffened slightly, her gaze flicking toward Cynthia. Trevor Daniels straightened from his casual, lean eyes, narrowing as if sensing that something far outside their rehearsed script was unfolding. Even Madison paused mid-sip, lowering her champagne flute ever so slightly, intrigued. Cynthia Blake held her ground, but shifted her weight, a subtle tightening around her mouth, betraying discomfort. She crossed the distance toward Selina with measured steps, her heels clicking across the marble like a metronome counting down. "I'm sorry, ma'am," Cynthia began, her tone dipped in authority, masked as politeness. "As I mentioned earlier, the owner isn't available for casual inquiries. I handle all client matters." Selina's eyes met Cynthia's calmly. There was no challenge in her gaze, only patience. She pressed a few buttons on the old phone with steady fingers, the faint beep of each number audible in the otherwise tense silence. Cynthia's voice tightened. "There's really no need to make any calls. If you have any concerns, I am more than capable of addressing them." But Selina didn't respond. The call connected. She raised the phone to her ear, speaking in a quiet tone that carried an unexpected authority. The name she spoke traveled through the still air like a spark igniting dry kindling. Yes, Monica, it's Selena Morgan. I've arrived. The moment hung like suspended glass. Amber's hand faltered slightly as she held Madison's next velvet tray. Trevor's smirk vanished completely. The showroom's hum of low conversation fell into uneasy quiet. Customers glanced sideways, sensing a shift, though not yet understanding its full weight. Even Madison leaned forward slightly, her carefully indifferent mask cracking with curiosity. She recognized the name Selena had spoken. Monica Caldwell wasn't just anyone, she was the regional president of Brilliance Gems, rarely seen on the showroom floor. Selena's conversation was brief, her words low and controlled. Yes, of course. I'll wait. She ended the call and calmly slipped the phone back into her satchel, her fingers brushing again against the document folded within her contract, her rightful claim. The room remained frozen. Cynthia's practiced mask was faltering, her knuckles whitening as she clutched the tablet in her hand like a life preserver. Her sharp eyes darted toward the front doors as though willing them to remain closed. Trevor shifted nervously, his earlier bravado gone. Amber, who moments ago had treated Selena with dismissive tolerance, now wore an unmistakable flush on her face, her breathing shallow. And then the doors opened. Monica Caldwell stepped inside with effortless authority, her tailored navy blazer fitting perfectly against the backdrop of glittering displays. The staff straightened instinctively at her arrival, as if her presence carried its own gravitational pull. Her gaze immediately found Selena, and her face lit with genuine warmth, a stark contrast to the tension crackling in the room. Selena Monica greeted, her voice carrying easily across the showroom, loud enough for every ear to catch. It's wonderful to see you again. The atmosphere flipped like a coin in midair. Whispers rippled across the floor. The wealthy couple in private consultation glanced over, brows furrowed. Madison watched, lips parted, trying to piece together a scene that no longer fit the script she knew. Cynthia froze, the color draining from her face as realization dawned painfully. Her hand trembled against her tablet, lowering it as Monica advanced further into the room, each step deliberate and sure. Monica turned briefly to address the staff, her tone cordial yet firm, the weight of corporate authority unmistakable. I'd like everyone to gather in the conference room. Now. The staff exchanged quick, panicked glances but obeyed without hesitation. Amber moved first, her hands ringing nervously. Trevor followed, eyes downcast. The junior staff retreated to the back corridors, their earlier self-assurance now replaced by uncertainty. Cynthia hesitated only a moment longer before following, though her steps were noticeably heavier. Her carefully constructed image was crumbling beneath the weight of what had just been exposed. Only Madison remained standing in place, momentarily forgotten, her expression, a fascinating blend of curiosity, surprise, and discomfort. For once, she was no longer the center of the room. Selena watched them all calmly. She didn't gloat, nor did she rush. The storm she had anticipated was unfolding exactly as she had known it would. As the last employee disappeared behind the glass doors leading to the conference room, Selena turned and walked alongside Monica, her posture relaxed but steady. The showroom, still sparkling under its carefully arranged lighting, had shifted entirely. Where once Selena had been the quiet outsider, judged by every glance, she now moved through the space as its silent center. The first tremors of reckoning had begun. The polished glass walls of the conference room reflected more than diamonds tonight. They reflected regret. The usual warmth of the showroom had not followed them into this space. Here, under the steady glow of recessed lighting, every person seated at the long mahogany table sat rigid, as though bracing for a storm. The city lights of Manhattan twinkled faintly through the tall windows behind them, offering no comfort. Selena Morgan sat at the head of the table, her posture steady, her presence commanding without force. The room was hers now. She wore the same navy blouse and worn jeans, her leather satchel resting quietly beside her chair, a stark contrast to the polished setting and the tension that filled the air. Cynthia Blake sat several seats down, clutching her tablet tightly, as if it might somehow anchor her in the rising tide of consequences. Amber Collins stared at her hands folded neatly on the table, her knuckles pale. Trevor Daniels shifted in his seat, unable to meet anyone's gaze. The junior staff hovered quietly in the background, watching but silent. Standing off to the side was Monica Caldwell, her expression unreadable but firm, her presence lending quiet reinforcement to Selena's authority. She was here to witness, not to shield anyone from the truth. The silence pressed against them all like thick air, each second stretching longer than the last. Finally, Monica spoke, her voice clear, slicing through the heavy stillness. Selena Morgan is the new owner of Brilliance Gems. The announcement landed like a weight on the table. There was no surprise anymore, only the cold reality settling into each face. Cynthia's lips parted slightly, but no words came. Amber's breath caught audibly. Trevor's head dropped a little lower. Even the junior staff exchanged wide-eyed glances, processing the full magnitude of what had just been confirmed. Selena allowed the moment to stretch, her calm gaze sweeping across the room, pausing on each face without judgment, but without retreat. "I came here today, not just to take ownership of a company," Selena began, her voice steady, carrying a quiet authority that filled every corner of the room. "I came to understand the culture I've inherited, to see it as it truly is, without announcements, without titles." Her words were not angry, but they struck deeply nonetheless. What I saw was a pattern, a way of doing business that judges people not by their intent, not by their character, but by how they look, by what you assume they can afford, by who you think deserves your best. She paused, allowing her words to hang. Amber shifted uncomfortably, her face flushing. Trevor exhaled, his shoulders drooping. Cynthia sat motionless, though her fingers trembled faintly against the cool surface of her tablet. Selena continued, her voice soft but unwavering. "I watched how some were welcomed with champagne, ushered into private rooms, given your full attention. And I watched others, people like me, pushed aside, quietly dismissed, offered catalogs instead of dignity." The confession cut through any lingering illusions. The staff sat beneath the weight of her words, unable to hide behind practiced smiles any longer. "If I weren't the owner," Selena asked softly, "would any of you have treated me differently?" The question hung in the air like a silent judgment. No one answered. No one dared. Cynthia's throat moved as she swallowed hard. Her eyes finally meeting Selena's, but offering no defense. Amber blinked rapidly, glancing down again, as though her hands might offer refuge. Trevor rubbed his palms against his slacks under the table, seeking comfort, in a gesture that offered none. Selena didn't demand their responses. She didn't need them. Their silence was its own confession. After a pause, she leaned forward slightly, her voice warming without losing its firmness. "But I am not here to punish you," she said. "I'm here to build something better, if you are willing to be part of that change." The unexpected grace in her words shifted the air in the room. Some of the tension eased, though uncertainty still lingered. The door to redemption had been cracked open, but stepping through it would require honesty. Trevor was the first to speak, his voice hesitant but sincere. I followed the lead I was given," he admitted, darting a glance toward Cynthia before lowering his gaze again. "Especially when high-profile clients like Madison came in. It just became the habit." The rawness in his words opened a small breach in the wall of defensiveness that had encased the room. Amber spoke next, her voice soft, shaking slightly. "I judged people too quickly," she said. "I chased commissions. I assumed anyone who didn't fit the image wasn't worth the effort." Her eyes flickered toward Selena, briefly full of guilt, before returning to her lap. The room stilled again as all eyes slowly turned toward Cynthia. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then her voice emerged barely above a whisper. "I thought control meant protecting our standards," she said, her facade finally cracking. "I thought being selective was part of maintaining the store's reputation. But I was wrong." She swallowed again. "I see that now. I'm sorry." Her words trembled with an unfamiliar vulnerability. The iron composure she'd always worn now gave way to something far more human. Selena listened quietly, giving space for the confessions to settle. She knew the power of silence, of allowing people to confront their own truths. Slowly, the air in the room shifted from suffocating tension to something softer, fragile, but honest. She rose from her chair, her voice even calm. "Change starts with us every day," she said. "This isn't about a single incident. It's about the kind of business we choose to be from this point forward." She glanced around the table, her gaze steady but encouraging. "I believe you can rise to meet that." The staff remained silent, but the silence was different now. It carried not fear, but reflection. Monica stepped forward, then her voice equally calm but firm. "We start tomorrow. And we start together." Cynthia nodded faintly, her earlier fear replaced with quiet resolve. Amber exhaled softly. Trevor finally raised his eyes, meeting Selena's for the first time since the meeting began. The first real shift had begun. Change doesn't arrive like thunder, it starts in whispers. The following morning, as sunlight filtered gently through the tall showroom windows, Brilliant's gems felt different. The same pink diamonds sparkled beneath pristine glass. The marble floors still gleamed like mirrors under the soft glow of spotlights. But the air carried a quiet hum of cautious hope, as if the entire store was holding its breath, waiting to see if words from the night before would truly take root. Selena Morgan arrived early, her worn satchel draped over her shoulder as always. She paused for a moment just inside the entrance, taking in the familiar showroom that now carried the weight of new beginnings. It was not her intention to erase what the store had been, rather to redirect what it could become. She moved with quiet authority through the showroom, her eyes catching small signs of discomfort and adjustment. Amber Collins stood near the front counter, nervously adjusting a velvet display tray for what seemed like the fifth time in as many minutes. The young white woman was no longer glancing around for her manager's cues. Instead, she focused on steadying her breathing, ready to meet the morning's test. Trevor Daniels stood a few feet away, checking the angles of the spotlight beams over a sapphire earring display. His usual smirk was absent, replaced by a tightly drawn focus. Every so often his eyes flicked toward the entrance as if mentally rehearsing his first interaction of the day. Cynthia Blake was at her usual post, near the back clipboard in hand. The sharpness that once defined her every motion had softened. She still carried herself with professional pride, but now her gaze was more thoughtful, her movements measured not by control, but by consideration. As Selena passed them, she offered a small nod of acknowledgement, simple but encouraging. None of the staff spoke first, but their eyes briefly met hers, and for the first time, there was no defensiveness behind them, only readiness mingled with apprehension. Monica Caldwell arrived soon after, standing quietly near the customer entrance. She had intentionally taken a step back, letting Selena guide this transformation, but her presence remained a steady anchor should it be needed. The first customer arrived just after opening, a middle-aged black woman, her hands tightly clutching a small purse as she stepped cautiously inside. Her clothing was neat but modest, a simple cardigan over slacks, practical walking shoes. She hesitated at the entrance, looking around, as though unsure if she was allowed to be here. Amber saw her first. There was a visible moment, a pause where old habits nearly resurfaced. But then Amber exhaled softly, grounded herself, and walked forward with genuine warmth. "Good morning, ma'am," Amber greeted with a smile that actually reached her eyes. "Welcome to Brilliance Gems. How may I assist you today?" The woman looked slightly relieved. I'm looking for an engagement ring for my daughter. She's worked so hard to save for college. I want to give her something special before she leaves." "Of course," Amber said gently. "We have a beautiful selection across a range of styles and price points. May I offer you some coffee while we browse?" Selena watched the exchange from a distance, her heart steady but hopeful. Amber's tone was no longer forced, her eyes no longer calculating whether the woman belonged. She was simply present. A few moments later, another customer arrived. A young man in a hoodie and faded jeans, his hands stuffed into his pockets. The same young man who had gone ignored just yesterday. This time, Trevor noticed him. "Hey there," Trevor said, walking over with a smile free of condescension. "Looking for something specific, I can walk you through a few options if you'd like." The young man hesitated, surprised to be noticed. Yeah. I'm thinking about proposing. Don't have a big budget, though." "That's perfectly fine," Trevor replied. "We have some wonderful pieces that are beautiful and meaningful, no matter the price." For Selena, these small exchanges were seismic shifts. They were the whispers where change truly lived. As the morning unfolded, Cynthia observed quietly. She noticed how Amber offered gentle advice rather than scripted sales pitches. She watched Trevor slow his pace, making space for nervous young customers who might have been dismissed before. The junior staff moved with more purpose, no longer glancing anxiously for silent approval. Eventually, Cynthia approached Selena near the emerald necklace display. Her voice was quieter than usual, stripped of its usual polish. "Miss Morgan, I wanted to say thank you for giving us a chance to do better," she said, her words carrying an earnest weight. "I didn't expect that." Selena turned to her, meeting her gaze fully. "Thank me with your actions, Cynthia," she replied softly. "That's what matters." Cynthia nodded, her eyes glistening faintly before she composed herself. She stepped back, returning to her staff, but with new purpose in her stride. As mid-morning settled into early afternoon, the showroom's rhythm adjusted. Laughter floated lightly as Amber helped the mother choose a petite diamond ring. Trevor chatted with the young man, offering genuine advice rather than rehearsed upsells. From her quiet corner, Monica watched it all with a subtle smile. Knowing Selena had already done what few could, she had changed the store's heart without breaking its foundation. Selena allowed herself a brief pause to absorb it all. The whispers of change had begun. The hard work still lay ahead, but in these small victories, she saw the path forward, clear, steady, and real. The diamonds still sparkled, but now they reflected something more than wealth. Weeks had passed since Selena Morgan quietly assumed her place at the helm of Brilliance Gems. The transformation wasn't loud or dramatic, but it was steady. The store's heartbeat had shifted. Beneath the glistening showcases and soft spotlights, a quiet dignity had taken root, one that honored people as much as it did the gems they sold. On this early December morning, the holiday season gently wrapped Manhattan in its annual embrace. Snow dusted the edges of Fifth Avenue, and the city hummed with a soft, festive energy. Inside the showroom, garlands of evergreen lined the window displays, intertwined with twinkling white lights. The faint scent of cinnamon and pine mingled with the familiar touch of jasmine that always lingered in the air. Selina entered the showroom with her usual quiet grace, her worn satchel resting comfortably on her shoulder. The staff was already in motion, preparing for the day's steady stream of holiday shoppers. But unlike weeks prior, the energy carried warmth rather than tension. Amber Collins stood near a young couple, admiring an engagement ring. Her voice was patient, guiding, offering reassurance without pressure. Across the room, Trevor Daniels adjusted a modest display of birthstone pendants, occasionally chatting with a teenage girl selecting a gift for her mother. Near the back, Cynthia Blake reviewed an updated customer service chart, one that now included guidelines about dignity, inclusion, and thoughtful engagement. She no longer carried the rigid weight of authority, but rather moved with quiet confidence, earning respect rather than demanding it. Selina made her rounds, exchanging soft smiles, answering a few brief questions, and letting the rhythm of the new Brilliance gems unfold. Each staff member met her eyes not with fear, but with quiet pride. As mid-morning settled, Monica Caldwell arrived for her scheduled meeting. She entered with her usual air of professionalism, but greeted Selina with genuine warmth. "You've done remarkable work here," Monica said softly, as they stood near the emerald necklace display. "I knew you would, but seeing it unfold has been something else entirely." Selina smiled gently. "They did the work, Monica. I just gave them space to see it for themselves." Together they watched as Amber guided an elderly man through choosing a locket for his wife. Trevor patiently explained diamond cuts to a college student buying her first piece of fine jewelry. Cynthia stepped in only when needed, offering support rather than scrutiny. These small moments, Monica observed, are the true gems of this place now. Selina nodded. "Exactly. Jewelry will always sparkle. It's how we treat the people who walk through those doors that determines who we are." As if on cue, a familiar figure hesitated at the entrance. It was Madison LeClaire. Today, her emerald dress had been traded for a sleek winter coat, her diamond bracelet still flashing under the holiday lights. She stood watching the store for a moment, her usual self-assurance tempered. Amber noticed her first and approached with calm professionalism. "Good morning, Miss LeClaire. Welcome back." Madison's expression softened, surprised but not displeased. "Thank you," she replied quietly. "It feels different in here." "We hope so," Amber answered kindly. "Is there anything I can help you find today?" Madison glanced around, noting the subtle but undeniable shift in atmosphere. After a pause, she smiled faintly and shook her head. "Not today. Just visiting." Selina observed the interaction from a distance, her expression thoughtful but serene. Even those who once benefited most from the old ways could sense the change and perhaps respect it. As Madison exited, Cynthia approached Selina quietly. "Small steps," she said softly. Selina smiled, her voice warm. "The only steps that ever last." Outside, snow began to fall gently, dusting the sidewalks like powdered sugar as holiday shoppers passed by. Inside, Brilliance gems continued to shine not only with diamonds, but with the quiet radiance of second chances, dignity, and a culture reborn. Selina stood near the front windows, watching the city bustle beyond the glass. The reflection staring back at her was no longer an outsider, but a builder, a leader who had quietly rewritten the rules. The road had been long, but now as snowflakes danced beneath Fifth Avenue's lights, she knew this was only the beginning. The snow continued to fall softly outside the grand windows of Brilliance gems, each flake twirling like a quiet celebration of change. Inside, the diamonds sparkled as they always had, but beneath their brilliance now pulsed a deeper light, one born not from wealth, but from dignity rediscovered. Selena Morgan, once dismissed as an outsider in worn jeans and a faded satchel, had reshaped not only a showroom, but the hearts of those within it. The staff, once blind to their own quiet prejudices, had learned to see with clearer eyes. And even those who once basked in unchallenged privilege like Madison LeClaire now paused to reflect on what truly gave this place its worth. In the end, it wasn't grand speeches or sweeping gestures that brought transformation. It was steady hands offering genuine kindness, patient hearts willing to listen, and quiet courage choosing the harder path. Selena's journey reminds us that breaking through prejudice doesn't always require anger or force. It often requires presence, patience, and unwavering dignity. True change begins not when we shout our worth, but when we stand in our truth long enough for others to see it. Just as a lighthouse does not chase the ships, it guides but simply stands steady in the storm. Our consistent acts of fairness and respect can illuminate even the darkest corners of bias. Every person we encounter carries a story we cannot see, and every moment offers us a chance to choose compassion over assumption. As you move through your own days, may this story encourage you to pause just for a moment before drawing conclusions about those who walk beside you. And if these gentle lessons have touched your heart, perhaps you might carry that warmth forward, sharing its quiet glow with someone who may be waiting for a light.